That's all he does.
Yeah, sure.
Alright, so you and
Well,
Ilyas, and whenever you're both ready, just don't talk over each other, keep it sensible and civil. It's just a cross-examination, that's it.
yeah, sure. Go ahead. I'm waiting for just Brother Ilyas to open up, and I'm more than happy to talk.
Ilyas, you're on mute, by the way. If you could just unmute. Okay, yeah, he's unmuted.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Alaikum salam. So, what did you want to discuss, Brother Ilyas? What do you want to talk with me about?
Told we are going to discuss absolute divine simplicity.
Absolute divine simplicity. What about it? Which one? Scotism, Thomism?
The view of the Islamic philosophers. Sifatuhu ayn zati.
صفاته عين ذاته. طيب. Okay. What do you want to discuss with me about that?
So we believe that the attributes of God are ontologically identical to each other, and they are identical to the essence itself.
I'm a nominalist, so by that virtue, I directly cannot believe it. Right? Mainly because of two reasons. First reason why I would not be able to believe that is because I don't believe distinction would entail composition as a nominalist. I think the second part stems more so from the understanding that as long as the attributes are descriptors, I think it's quite an impossibility for them to be something that is composite or within the essence itself, right? They're mere descriptions. So like a cup can be described by having a round bottom and a holder, so you can hold it, right? Now let's assume the cup is simple. We all know that a cup is complex, right? But let's assume that it's something that is universal. Then I would argue that the roundness of the bottom of the cup and the holder of the cup are merely just descriptions of the cup. In other words, without being able to see the effects of these two things that I've mentioned, you would not be able to know the cup.
Yeah. Do you think that the proposition that God exists is dependent upon other propositions?
Do I think that the proposition that God exists is dependent on other propositions? What do you mean by that?
Is it a function? Is it a function of other ontological propositions, or is it a atomically true proposition in itself?
I would argue. Well, as a Muslim, I would say it's a if someone was to just present it as a statement, then it would just be a brute truth, right?
No,
But
that's fine. But for example, let us take
this
let X be okay. Go ahead.
no. You go ahead by all means, of course.
Yeah, I was saying that we can denote anything that has the quality of existence, right? Or about which we can say that it exists, right? Let it say like we can call it X, right? So obviously in the real world we see many X's, right?
Yeah.
Many normal things, like a cup exists, right? Now this proposition that a cup exists is basically is a conjunction. It's an AND gate of many specific conditions. For example, the atoms of the cup exist, right? Fulan kind of motion exists, this force exists, that things exist, right?
Yeah.
So this proposition that this cup exists, right, is not a proposition that is true in itself. Rather, it is just a placeholder for the amalgamation of the truth value of so many other propositions, right? Now, for God, for Islamic philosophers, when we say that God exists, right? What we are saying, when we say that God exists, what we are actually saying is that this proposition that God exists, right? It is not a function of any other proposition. Obviously, this proposition has concomitants. It has other things, other propositions that it makes true, right? For example, the creation exists. But in itself, this proposition is absolutely simple. It's conceptually simple, linguistically, conceptually, metaphysically simple, such that there is no other thing. For example, when I say God exists, right? What I am saying is that I am not implying the existence of anything non-identical to God. Right? For example, let me make it clear by an example. For example, when I say a chair exists, right? By definition, the proposition, when I say, oh, this proposition that the chair exists has a truth value and this truth value is true. Well, obviously here, some people get confused. By truth value, I know you would understand it, but by truth value, I don't mean it is true. By truth value, I mean it is either true or false. Being false is also a truth value. It's the truth value of being false. So when I say a chair exists, right? Now, by assigning truth value to this proposition and a positive truth value, that is to say this proposition is true, what I am doing is that I have to presuppose the truth value and the truth of the propositions like atoms exist, right? It is meaningless to say that a chair exists, right? It is meaningless to even think of a chair without a metaphysical composition, right? Because a chair has four legs, chair has full parts, right? And the parts exist prior to the whole itself, right? There is no way you can talk of the whole or think of the whole without implying the existence of the parts, right? When what we are saying is this, that when we say that God exists, right? We are, by definition, because there can be either two cases. One case is that there is no metaphysically simple proposition in existence, right? If that is true, that leads us to an infinite regress, and that merely makes every existential proposition a function, and it is impossible to have an infinite function because an infinite function is basically meaningless. But we do know that existence exists, right? So there has to be something in existence that has a metaphysically simple proposition, right? When we say God is a, that's just our proof for God. God is the being that about which we say it exists, and that proposition is a metaphysically simple proposition. Now, if God is God's existence, when we say God exists, is a metaphysically simple proposition, right? Then it follows from it that everything that is God is identical to God. What do we mean by that? For example, a chair has roundness, or a glass has roundness, right? Or a chair also has height, or it can also have a weight, right? But the weight of the chair is not identical to the height of the chair, even though they are both set off of the chair, right? Why? Because when we say chair exists, chair itself is a metaphysically complex proposition. But when we say God exists, right, and God is a metaphysically simple proposition, right? Therefore, everything that is said of God is God. And this is why we say sifatuhu aina zati, that attributes of God are identical to his essence. If this were not the case, just suppose that the attributes are distinct, and by distinction, we mean real distinction, right? Not just conceptual distinction, because we believe in the conceptual distinction of the attributes as well. If the attributes are really distinct from each other, for example, there is an existent X which is said of God, and there is an existent Y that is said of God, and X and Y are not identical to each other. What does that mean? That means that the proposition that God exists is actually a conjunction of the proposition that Y exists and X exists. These two different attributes exist, right? It is an amalgamation of these things. But then God does not remain God. Then what you are calling off as God, right, is not God. It's not a metaphysically simple proposition. Rather, you have made, then the same question would be asked about these attributes. Are these attributes metaphysically simple or not? If they are not, then we have we keep on going like that. We have already established that there is a metaphysical simple. And if you say no, the attributes are metaphysical simplicities, then you have asserted a plurality of metaphysical simplicities. But a plurality of metaphysical simplicities is a contradiction. It is not possible. Well, we have different arguments for that, but I think like all of us agree with that there can't be two gods. So that is the argument that is presented by the philosophers in favor of divine simplicity.
Okay, so then I'd have a question. Would you agree with me that the atoms that you're describing, because I'm guessing this is the atom argument for ADS, right? Um, so would you agree with me that these atoms, they essentially make up something that is a particular, and these atoms themselves are particulars?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if they're particulars, then the way that we would argue it at least is that we would be saying that, well, then the explanation of the atoms then would not apply here. Because for someone who's an ethity, who's nominalistic in belief, we would say that that the descriptors themselves are sufficient, right? And they do not entail something of complexity. So we look at the attributes as something that describe what the essence can do. Um, most etherites would not argue for subsisting in the essence. We would argue for it being descriptors of the essence, meaning the essence can do something, hence why God is the
Okay,
creator.
but then that is an abstraction. That isn't a claim about ontology of God.
No, but we don't say it's an abstraction because we say that the effects are real. So, for
They are
example,
they are what?
the effects are real. So, what I mean by this is the
No,
following.
no, that's fine. Their effects. We agree with that. That's essentially what the position of philosopher is.
Yeah,
That's
but
what the position of Ibn Arabi is. That the attributes explain what the essence is. That's absolutely fine. There's no problem with
the
that. What?
the thing this is the following issue that we mainly have is the idea that these descriptors do not become sufficient for proponents of ADS. So rather, they would say that this perfection of God has to be the essence itself. Now, earlier you said, I believe, this is even linguistically um, something that is feasible, and I would disagree with that. The reason why we would disagree with that mainly is because we would say it wouldn't be linguistically feasible at all. Because whenever someone would believe in ADS and comes over and says God created the earth, what he really means by that is not that God created the earth. What he means is that God did God, and then earth. God did God. It's the same action, the same hammer hitting the anvil. It's all just the same action, but it's perceived differently by humans conceptually. And we would disagree here because we would say that there is a real distinction based on what is actually happening. In other words, we do not say that the actions that are occurring are all the same hammer hitting the anvil, is the same singular action that we perceive differently, but rather that we would say that these are distinct attributes because you see distinctual effects. So, for example, when God shows his wrath to someone, you see that wrath. When God shows mercy to someone, you see that mercy.
Okay, okay, okay. I'll try to explain it in a very simple way. This is actually a very common objection. But if anyone is to think about it, I know it might sound like this at first, but this requires just a little bit of time and just thinking on your own about this thing, and then inshallah you would get it. Or may I could be wrong as well. So we believe in something which is called unity of virtues, and obviously the unity of being as well.
Yeah.
Wahdatul wujud, right? And then wahdatul kamalat.
You believe in
So
Wahdatul Wujud.
yes, yes. So
Interesting.
basically, I'll give you an example, and I think that should make it clear. And those who know physics as well, I can give an example from physics too to make it simpler. The thing is that this is a Platonic doctrine which is of unity of virtues. Let's start from there. Let's try to explain it from that lens. Imagine a person who is very wise, right? This person has great wisdom, absolute wisdom. And wisdom is actually the basis, the principle of all virtues, all the good actions. Wisdom is the basis of all these good actions. Now, at every moment, at every situation, this person knows what is the best way to act.
Is that wisdom universal
Once,
or particular?
yeah, I'm just giving an example. I'm just then we'll
In
we'll
that
proceed.
example. In that example.
The universal, obvious, the wisdom as manifested in the person is particular, but it is the abstraction of universal principles.
Okay.
So this person always knows what is the best way to act. Now, one day this person was walking past someone, and this person sees a beggar.
Right.
And Due to their wisdom, they realize that right now the wisest choice is to give this beggar some money, right?
Okay.
They go on somewhere else, right? And they see someone is drowning or something. And right now, this person realizes the wisest choice right now, the portrayal of wisdom right now, is
Um,
to help this person, right?
but this is
Oh, one minute, let me finish, then
yeah.
we can talk.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, what the person has done in both the cases is actually just wisdom. It's a manifestation of wisdom itself. But what happens is that even though it is a manifestation of wisdom, wisdom is expressed in two different ways, right? And in one way, when we see one particular manifestation of wisdom, we start calling it, generosity. And when we see another manifestation of wisdom, we start calling it courage, right? But wisdom in itself remains one. It is linguistically and philosophically right to say that, oh, that person acted wisely, right? And in the other sense, it is also philosophically right to say that person acted wisely in the other sense as well. Now, why do we have these conceptions that generosity is different and uh, courage is different, right? The reason we have that is that when we live in this particular world, right, we see different gradations of one singular reality, right? We see people who have wisdom in one respect, who have valor or courage, right, but who lack wisdom in another respect, who are not as generous, for example. Or people who have wisdom in one respect, generosity, but don't have wisdom in another respect. And that is why we start making subcategories of these things. Similarly, you can have an example from physics as well. Many times in physics, we have universal theories, right? We have universal laws that were not discovered before, right? And for those universal laws, we used to have two different models, right? For example, oh, this model is going to explain gravity, and this model is going to explain projectile motion, right? But guess what? You can have a more fundamental theory which can unite both gravity and projectile motion, for example, right? Now, what do we do? Even though those two things are linguistically actually become identical to each other because they are reducible to a mathematical theorem, right? But even then, we see two manifestations of them. Why? Because we put them in two different contexts. That is exactly what the philosopher believe about divine attributes. That, yeah, the divine attributes in their own self, the divine reality is absolutely simple. Rather, what is even more clear to say is that there's an attributes are actually nothing other than existence itself, and the existence of God is absolutely simple. Now we see different gradations of existence in this place. Obviously, we are not unlimited in our existence, so we see these different gradations of existence. And when we see a thing which is round but which is which lacks some other perfection, we call it a certain thing. Oh, this is a cup. And when we see something which has some attributes but not the others, we call it a chair. But God is the basis of all perfections, all existence. He is the reality of existence itself, right? That is why everything can be attributed to him, and in the same way, everything is identical to him in that respect. Just like in the unifying theories of physics, right? Every other equation, if you, for example, we were to have a grand theory of everything, right? Every other theory would be actually identical to that theory itself, even though there would be a conceptual distinction between, oh, Fulan theory and Fulan theory. So this is
Wait, that's
exactly
not even
what the
true though. Every other theory would not be identical to the grand total theory. Every other theory would be something part and parcel of the grand total theory.
Not interrupt the discussion, Kathir, I'm going to ban you.
Wait, he just said something.
Okay, continue.
So, when it comes to this thing, right? I already disagree with the very first premise. I'm not saying that the idea you are giving is difficult to understand. Not at all. I think it's one of the easiest concepts to understand in philosophy. I just say that it's wrong, right? And the reason why I say that my view says that it's wrong, or my worldview says that it's wrong, is mainly because it combines God into being the super property based off the notion of human perception. And what I mean by this is that, well, in ADS, God isn't really describing himself. It's humans describing God. And for me, that becomes a little bit problematic because the way that I see it is that when it comes to the attributes, I argue that they're still descriptions of what the essence can do. So let's use the example that you gave with the wise individual. So let's say that there's this wise man, and he exemplifies wisdomness, right? I would argue that he's a particular, but let's, for the sake of the point, let's say that he is simple. Okay, he's not complex. All right. So this wise man, I would argue that he's not, when he acts wise, is not a reflective mirror of his own direct essence, but rather it's a description of what he did, right? And so what I mean by this is that you do not say that someone is wise unless you distinctly recognize him as doing something wise, right? You don't have a concept of wisdom in your head that comes into fruition or something that someone embodies. I would argue that it's vice versa. I would say, so you would understand what wisdom is, and then you would have to distinctly point out that someone is acting wise based as a descriptor of what he did. So in other words, to make it simpler, I would say instead of saying that someone acted wisely because it's a mirror reflection of himself, I would say he acted wisely because I am describing how he acted, right? He is acting wisely. That's I think that's point number one. With point number two, the issue with the super property thing, and I wanted to discuss this in specific, is that it's essentially it's a way that is used to provide a realist predication from something that associates predication with properties and objects. And what I mean by this is the following, is that so you would view everything as composition if it maintains any distinction. And I think this is false. Again, I've said this in the beginning, I'll repeat it again. Something that is distinct from another thing as a descriptor is not a necessitation of buildup, because I'm not saying these descriptions make with the wise man example, we're not saying these descriptions are what's making the wise man whom he is, but rather they're just mere descriptions of what this man is doing, right? Or can do. So in the same way, I would say that God is called the creator, not because the essence itself is the creator, but rather because the essence has the ability to create. The creator is a descriptor. That's an uncreated descriptor. It's describing an action from the uncreated. And I do not think that entails any predication, because I don't say that makes up the essence. Descriptions do not make up something. Descriptions are things that you are able to distinctly see from that thing. That's for the second point. For the third,
Then you have agreed with us.
no, I entirely disagree, because I would argue that ADS.
Is the essence simple?
By simple, you mean not built up of things? Yeah, I don't believe it's built up like a Lego building.
Does the essence have any composition?
No, I would deny composition. Any ethity denies composition. We're nominalistic.
Then you
but
believe
composition
the
is impossible.
essence is simple.
But we do not say the attributes are not distinct. That's our main disagreement here. It's not that we don't say God is complex. No ethity says God is complex.
Are they distinct? Oh, we also say attributes are distinct from one another, but in an abstraction, not in an actuality.
Yeah, exactly. You guys say conceptually. We say not conceptually. We say really.
For what do you mean by really?
I mean that they are literally distinct from one another, mainly because of the effects. So in other words, I'm saying if they're only
that is fine. If that is what you mean by literally, then we agree with that as well. We are saying,
no, I would say you disagree, because the whole crux of absolute divine simplicity is that all these attributes are one super property.
In one sense, yes, and in another sense, no. Actually, What
Well,
if what you're saying is that the attributes are distinct from each other insofar that they have different effects, right? Then we agree. That is actually why we have sifatul fi'liya, right? Why we distinct between the divine attributes at the first place, because all of them have different effects.
so
What we are saying essentially is that insofar that their existence, right? Insofar that their existence, they are identical to each other. For example, the
disagree.
proposition that God exists,
We
it's
disagree about it.
not. It's okay. But let's start from there then, because we first need to find a difference, I think. So, for
Uh,
you, is the proposition God exists, right? Is it a metaphysically simple proposition or a complex proposition?
God existing, I believe that's a um, the statement in itself or what it entails.
God exists. No, no, no. Did you understand the sense of how propositions can be metaphysically complex or simple?
Yeah, so something that is a proposition. Okay, so a proposition, God exists, right? That proposition in itself, and what I mean by what I ask you is that are you asking me that the statement God exists requires additional proof, and then that builds up the sum of the argument, or are you just asking me if God is simple or not?
Asking is that is the proposition that God exists, right? Does
Yeah,
the truth of this proposition assume the truth of anything that is non-identical to God?
anything that is non-identical, yeah, it's if you're saying it's necessarily true in all scenarios, yeah.
No, no, no. That's not what I'm asking.
Well,
What I'm
what?
asking is this basically, that is the proposition that God exists, right? Does the truth of this proposition, by definition, presume the truth of any other non-identical proposition?
I,
For
w- I wouldn't
example,
I wouldn't say it's a presumation. I would argue it's a conclusion to begin with.
no, I'm not asking about the concomitants of this proposition. For
No, no,
example,
I understand now. Yeah, but what I'm trying to
yeah,
pinpoint here is that the question, if you're asking me this question, then I guess the only thing I could raise up is the following. I would say, well, is this truth um, assuming towards everything that is non-identical to God? I would say, yeah. So something that is not identical to God, it's still truthful upon them. It would still be a necessary truth to them. I would say yes, right. But I think the way that we're going through past each other here is from the aspect of conceptualism and nominalism. That's why I'm trying to take the argument there, because I think
no, no, I am actually acting like a nominalist right now. I have not made any other
no,
claims about metaphysics.
you made
What
a you
I'm
made a
saying,
conceptual claim. You made a
yeah,
conceptual.
actually, the whole argument is itself based on nominalism, right? It is
I would,
not a.
I
I'm
would
not assuming the existence of anything that is other than a bare particular, right?
I would
What
I
I'm
would
asking you is basically this: that when I say God exists, right? By definition, am by saying this proposition, can this proposition be true, right? Without the truth of the existence of any other bare particular.
that okay. The first thing that you said, I would heavily disagree with. I do not think the argument is built on nominalism whatsoever, because we've made four conceptual. I've addressed four conceptual claims here. One being that all the attributes are the same, and they're only distinct conceptually. That's a conceptualist argument. It's not a nominalistic argument, because the nominalist would argue that you see the effects within the particulars. Um, Second of all, I think the more nominalistic approach would be to say that these attributes, like I said earlier, they're descriptions. They do not entail composition. And the reason why I say we disagree, you said we agree, I believe we heavily disagree, is on the understanding of this conceptual part of the attributes, yes. And what I mean by this is that if you are to say that all the attributes are the same, they're only conceptually distinct, I'd argue that's very problematic, because what you'd be telling me is you'd be saying, well, jihadist, I cannot tell if God is giving me mercy or if God is giving me wrath, because all the stuff I'm deducing is simply from a concept in my head, and concepts can be wrong. So by default, unless you say your concept is a necessary concept that's been instilled in you, then the argument does not follow. So I would say the more logical thing to say and conclude is the following: is to say that the attributes of God are really distinct, and the distinction here is proven by the effects of it. In other words, you could tell that there's mercy happening. You could tell that there is wrath happening. That's the first thing. That's the second thing. The third thing that I would like to address here is the understanding of the super property again, because I didn't get my question answered. ADS assumes, or entails rather, that God is a super property. All the attributes of God is this one giant super property. And this is a divine trope, right? But the problem is I would reject this divine trope completely, right? Because I would say that if you say that God is a bundle of these things, and these bundles are the only way to recognize God, I would say that's heavily problematic, because then you would hinge God being recognized as God on your personal conceptuality, and that to me becomes a problem. Because then I would say, well, if the way you see God is solely dependent on your personal conception of what these things are, then God is left for random interpretation. As long as they believe the same thing you do, which is ADS, they would be believers in your eyes. So Zoroastrians, if they maintain the same thing, they would be believers. All they have to do is say, well, hey, listen, they're only conceptually two gods. They're only conceptually different, right? But then that wouldn't entail actual difference between the two. They would be the same God, and so on and so forth. One could make the same argument for the Trinity, right? That's what Christians essentially argue for, and someone who's a polytheist can make that same argument. So we go into this world of obscurity where we cannot describe our recognition. And essentially what I'm trying to say here is that it is very necessary for these attributes to be really distinct if you want to know God. You cannot claim to know God while there is no distinction. You cannot tell me that, for example, the color blue is there if you don't know what blueness is, or if blueness is merely something that is entirely conceptual with no effect on reality. It's not really something that exists. Then you cannot tell me that, for example, a car is blue, or a car is dark blue, or a car is really blue. And so things that are universal, I guess, I would say that they have real effects, and that's how we're able to tell the distinction. That's how we are able to say, well, blueness is distinct from redness, right? But we do not jumble them into a super property. Someone who proposes ADS, he would argue that blueness and redness is essentially jumbled into the super property of colors. And I would say this is entirely problematic. And likewise with God, and likewise with many things. And that's why I say, well, it's not a nominalistic argument, it's a conceptualist argument. Because the beginning of the argument started with your belief being conceptual. Now, all I'm suggesting is that if we address both particulars and conceptuality, our discussion would move on very, very smoothly. Because if one was to explain to me how the recognition of something that is a particular, without the mention of concepts, then you would be able to prove ADS. But as long as you have to go to your concept first, your concept of what that thing would entail, then that means God's descriptions or God's attributes are entirely hinged upon your conception of those attributes and what they mean. Because someone could see wisdom as meaning something very specific, and you could see wisdom as meaning something totally specific. For example, the ministers of China will say that what the Chinese leader is doing is wise, while the American ministers would say that what the American president is doing is wise. So they have this conceptual difference between the two, even if they're jumbled up into a giant super property. In conceptualism or in ADS, neither side would be technically incorrect. And this to me poses a big problem. Because I'm saying that you cannot recognize wisdom without being able to see something that is wise happening. So in other words, God had to distinctually show mercy in order for you to recognize, that is God's mercy, and then you have a conception of that mercy. With conceptualism, it's the opposite. It's you have a conception of that, and then poof. And then the hard conceptualist, that's a different thing. Hard conceptualists would tell you they think of stuff and it pops up.
I think we should start from the very basics then, because I think that we are just going past each other at this point. I am asking a very simple question actually. What I'm saying is this, that the divine reality, the divine essence, does not have any distinctions, any real ontological distinctions within its own self. Because it can either be two cases. There can either be two cases. Either either something has ontological distinctions within its own self, or something does not have ontological distinctions within its own self. These are only two possibilities. If something does have ontological distinctions within its own self, then that means that the proposition that this existent exists depends upon the proposition that other existents exist, right? And that renders this existent contingent or composite, whatever you want to call it. Or the other option is that this existent is simple and it does not depend upon anything else to exist. In that case, there is no ontological distinction within the divine essence. So I think the very first point to talk about is that whether the divine essence has any real ontological distinction or not. Let us not even talk about attributes right now, because for you, you have a particular view of attributes, one can have another view of attributes. So let's talk about ontological distinctions first. So do you think that the divine essence has any ontological distinctions within its own self?
By within its own self, do you mean subsists?
No. Are there any ontological distinctions in the
Yeah.
divine essence?
Yeah. What by that do you mean that are you asking me? Is there any complexity in the essence itself? No, I would say the essence is simple. But what I'm explaining is that my view does not entail that whatsoever. My only objection towards ADS is the following. Like I said,
That is fine. That is fine. Let us first see where we agree with. That is when
yeah,
you can come back to the objections.
yeah.
So
Sure. Before we agree,
yeah, you see that you say that the divine essence is absolutely simple.
not absolute. I say it's simple.
The divine essence does not have any complexity within its own self, right?
Yeah, I don't believe the essence is built up of things. No.
Okay. So are there multiple propositions about the divine essence that are signifying different realities?
What do you mean by signifying different realities?
What I mean is that if, for example, it's very simple. If I have a chair, right? And if I
Okay.
say a chair has four legs, right?
Using chair so far.
And 1 minute, let me explain. A chair has four legs, right?
Mhm.
And then I make another proposition that
All
a
right.
chair has this weight, right?
Okay.
These are two linguistically different propositions. Would you agree? Their semantic content is different from each other. The semantic content
I would
is
disagree.
non. So you think that saying the chair has a weight and the chair has a color are identical propositions?
No, I would say they're descriptors of the chair.
Yeah, that's fine, but they are significant. What I'm saying is that their lexical, their
Yeah,
semantic content is non-identical to each other.
the
Saying
weight
that
are not
yeah,
identical.
yeah, saying that the chair has a weight and chair has a color are not identical statements. They are two different things. They're telling us two non-identical things about the chair, right?
Yeah, correct.
Similarly, uh, so we have a simple view of linguistics. What we are saying is that if there is a linguistic difference as such, right, it is also it entails talking about two different realities,
I
right?
would
For
disagree.
example, okay, you can disagree, but that's what I'm saying. That either, right, if there are multiple propositions about God, right, For example, when I say a chair has a color and a chair has a weight, right? The signified of the color and the signified of the weight are not identical to each other, right?
Can you repeat just the last part? My apologies.
Yeah, the signified of the weight and the
Yeah.
signified of the color are not identical to each other. Like the color is not the weight is not the color.
Yeah, the weight is not the weight is not the color, and the color is not the weight.
Absolute. Okay. Now, what I'm asking you is that about the same divine essence, right? I'm not asking about relational things, properties that are relational, right? I'm talking about ontology of the divine essence itself, right?
I understand.
The divine essence as it is, devoid of any other relation, right?
Okay, so
Okay.
so far,
What I'm saying is, yeah.
I'm understanding so far, but the issue at hand is not being addressed.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to see where we disagree and where we agree.
Okay.
Right. So I'm not, because relational properties, we can talk about them later, right? Because relations are something else. What I'm talking about right now objectively is about the divine essence itself, devoid of any other consideration, right? Now, do you believe that there are multiple distinct ontological propositions about the divine essence?
Though I believe that there are multiple distinct ontological definitions of the essence.
Propositions about the divine essence.
Well, what do you mean? Can you give me an example of this proposition? Of such a
For
proposition?
example, of an existential proposition about reality.
Okay.
A proposition about reality.
So if I was to say God is the merciful and God is the creator.
No, all these are relational things, right? I'm talking.
Yeah, then if we're not talking about the relational things, then so far we agree. Because if you're just asking me off the crux, is God built up of things? I would tell you no, the essence is not built up of things. It's not something that's complex. These things do not make up the essence.
That's fine. What I'm asking is about the ontology of the divine essence, not about the relations of the divine.
The ontology of the divine essence here then would be something we agree upon, because but my entire disagreement and objection to ADS is the relational part, is the attributes part specifically. So far, it's been I think 35 minutes or so, and
okay, so
we've just been agreeing with each other that God is not built up of things.
Okay, we are going somewhere. Stick with me. So you say that when I make a proposition, right, about the reality, about the ontology of the divine essence,
Okay.
right?
So
all the propositions about the divine essence are identical to each other. Do you believe that? All the non-relational propositions about the divine essence are identical to each other.
Okay, my apologies, I'm back.
Okay.
My father just had to ask me a question. Okay, so but I did hear everything. So again,
Yeah.
I need an example of what you're saying here. So if you're saying that, okay, in terms of the thing that
I can explain simply.
Yeah,
For example,
I
can either be.
I understand.
Okay.
I just need an example. Is all. Right. So give me an example. Example of like one thing that would apply.
Okay. So there can be two types of ontological propositions, right?
Okay.
Either can be relational or non-relational.
Or
right?
non-relational.
Relational is basically, like, oh, my conduct to that thing is like this. Oh, I am 5 meters away from that thing, right? Or whatever it may be. I am acting like this to that thing. I'm not talking about that right now. What I'm talking about is basically non-relational proposition. For example, like such what? I have a hand, for example, right? That is a non-relational proposition. Like this proposition that I have a hand, right? It has nothing to do with what other reality is happening around me or whatever, right? I have a hand, or I don't have a hand.
No,
It could be this.
I would disagree, because then I would say what you are essentially going down the road of is what I would call the Mafawwid road.
Or what of what?
What I would describe it, at least from what I've seen, is what I call the Mafawwid road, right? Which is not assigning any form of meaning to these things. And what I would say is that all of these attributes, in some capacity, have a relational meaning. And what I mean by this is the following: is that God is the creator because the essence can create. So far, all I'm saying is all of our things are. This is what I mean when I say we need to discuss the issue at hand, because I understand we're going somewhere, but so far we're agreeing, right? But what I'm trying to say here is that in the first stance of which you are saying that God is complex or simple, I'm a nominalist, so it is impossible for me to say that God is complex. But rather, like I said, I think the only thing, and I've made it very clear, I only have one objection towards ADS, only one.
Yeah, that's fine. I understood that objection. That is exactly
No,
what I'm
yeah,
answering. But
but
for that objection, we need to talk about something even more basic than that at the first place. We have to
the
talk
basic
about.
stuff I agree with.
Yeah, but we have to first understand what we mean by relational and non-relational propositions. Only then we can move forward, because the whole concept is based on this. What I'm trying to tell you, and I think I should make it even simpler for audience here, is that, see, our idea is very, very basic. It is basically this: you have reality, right? Reality is objective, right? Reality has two components:
Okay.
interaction and non-interaction, relation and non-relation, right? All that is with that which is relational can be derived from that which is non-relational. For example, I'll give you a simple example. Person A has a location and person B has a location, right? Now,
Okay.
if I know the non-relational position of person A, and if I know the non-relational position of person B, then I know the relational position of person A and person B, right? So everything that is relational can be reduced down to that which is non-relational.
I, I,
That's basically
I would
that's
ver-
basically.
I
And
would
if you're
very
a nominalist, there's no way you can disagree with this, because this is
no.
essentially what nominalism is saying, that everything is a bare particular. I grant you that, I agree with you. Okay, everything is a bare particular, right? No
No,
problem with that at all.
no, that's not mainstream nominalistic thought. I know what you're talking about specifically, but the idea of nominalism is just simply this: is that universals have a direct effect on reality, and that particular is directly affected by that universal. That's all it really is. And it was even there was even a explained by a philosopher called something Bacon or Bacon in 1996, I believe. He commented on the same thing.
Bacon.
He has a funny name, yeah. But the understanding that I have here is that Ilyas, I'm not saying that the argument is not simple. I'm not saying that at all. I fully understand where you're coming from, but my point is just I'm saying it's incorrect, right? What you are telling me would be incorrect. I would disagree with
that
you.
that's fine, that's fine, but I'm trying to explain. I'm not even presenting the argument right now. I'm trying to
I know,
explain
yeah.
something even more simple.
I
Yeah,
100% understand. You're not presenting you presented the argument with the atoms. I said, well, that doesn't apply. We moved on to the questions part. You're asking me on the simple part, but I'm telling you that in this specific field, we will get nowhere. It'll go in a circle. Trust me, I've many discussions will just go in circles.
that's fine.
Um,
I'm trying to talk about something even more fundamental at this point. What
it's
I'm saying basically is this: that reality as whole can be explained by something called ontological proposition. Right? All the reality can be reduced down to propositions being either true or false. That's all I'm saying. Do you agree with that?
that all reality can be described by one single ontological.
No, not one single ontological proposition, but
Yeah,
all reality can be described by ontological propositions, being
all
true or
real
false.
all reality can be described by ontological propositions,
Yeah, being true or false.
being true or false. Uh,
Yeah,
I would say it depends.
So there can be some reality. Oh, then you're saying that law of excluded middle can be true,
No, no,
or
no. I'm not at all. I'm not suggesting that something can be true and false at the same time.
yeah, then something is either true or false.
What I'm yeah, okay. If you're gonna describe it in that way, then yeah, sure, I agree. But
Okay, okay, okay.
if
Now what I'm
something
saying,
can be true or false, yeah. But if
yeah,
the way that I was looking at it
now
is if you do not know about something, then you cannot reach that propositional true or false statement, so to speak, and so you cannot make an ontological.
okay, okay. Now I have a question for you. Is
Yeah,
the
what's up?
divine essence in the divine essence without relation to anything else apart from the divine essence? Is it powerful?
Is the essence powerful?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. We'll agree. The essence is
Okay.
powerful.
Without relation to something else apart from it, outside of it.
I would disagree.
So, okay, you say the essence is only powerful in relation to things outside of it, right?
No, I would say it's independent of these things, but I would say that the only way to recognize the essence being powerful is by relational
Yeah,
observation.
that's fine. That's fine. But recognition is different than being the case, right? You might not recognize something that the thing might be that thing. The recognition is not our subject in here, right? As of now. What I am asking is that does the essence
So
have power?
when I say the word recognition, I do not mean it as oh I'm recognizing this. I'm saying you cannot make that claim in the first place. Period. And so you
Okay,
cannot say
that's fine as well. That's fine as well.
you would not be able to ask is the essence powerful if there is no relation to the word powerful. In other words, you would not know what powerful is to begin with because there's nothing to relate it to.
That is fine. That is fine. What I'm questioning right now is that does the essence have power in its own self?
Does the essence have power in its own self?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what do you mean by power?
No, whatever you take to mean by power.
What do I take to mean by power?
Yeah, whatever you take to mean by power. That's all I'm asking. Does the essence have power?
I would argue ability. That's what I would take it as.
Okay. Does the essence have power?
Yeah, sure. If we're going by what I'm saying, then yeah.
Okay. And does the essence have existence?
Yeah. I'll say the essence
Okay.
exists. I wouldn't say it has existence.
Okay, the essence exists, right? Now, what I'm saying is very simple. Either everything I say about the essence, every proposition about the essence, right? Not about the relations of things with essence. Not about that. About the essence itself, right? Every proposition I make about the essence is either identical to each other or different. There can be only two possibilities, right?
I would disagree.
So there can be a third possibility as well.
No, it's not. I wouldn't disagree about the possibilities part. What I'm disagreeing here is the given explanations, because again,
No, no,
when
what I'm
you
saying
move
is
it,
what I'm saying is this.
when you move it away from the relational part, I understand you're trying to simplify it away from the relational part. But all I'm saying is that then you wouldn't be addressing the point I'm making, because you see, so
No,
far
no,
I'm telling
I am not even going to that point. I'm just asking you right now.
yes,
I
yes,
will
yes.
go to that point. I will go to that point, but hold on to that thought for a minute. What I'm
Um,
asking you right
no,
now is that just take the reality of the essence, right?
I have
And
it.
tell me, are there multiple ways in which are there multiple linguistically, semantically different propositions that I can make about this essence?
You could make different propositions. For example, you could say that this essence is you could say God is merciful. You could say God is
No, that is again a relation. I'm saying about the essence itself.
no, but if you're but then you're negating the whole issue, because the whole issue is I'm saying you
No,
would not be able to recognize the essence.
we will talk about that. What I'm talking about right now is what the essence is. When we
Right?
say ma hua, what is it, right? Being merciful, all the actions, taking the actions of the essence aside. For example, it is one thing that I am, right? I am made of this fula and fula atom, and it is another thing that I go on and punch someone in the
Yeah,
face, right?
the essence in itself, as I repeat for the 100th time, it is entirely simple. Yes, I'm not I'm not saying
That
what
is
you're.
fine. That is fine.
Yes,
I know you are saying this,
it's not
but
it's
I'm
not a
trying to show you.
it's not a
I know you are saying this, but I'm trying to
absolutely.
show you that there are some implications of saying this, right?
The,
So you
the
have to.
implication, yeah, but I'm saying the implication does not imply. What you're doing here is you're
No,
dismissing.
you have not heard my implication yet.
No,
I've
but
not read.
I know where this is going.
What is the implication that I'm going to make?
You're going to make the implication that it's still considered complex. But what I'm trying to suggest here is the
No, no,
following.
no, no. That's not what I'm going to say.
You
That's
would.
not what I'm.
So if that's not what you're going to
No,
say, so you're
what I'm trying to tell you is this. First of all, you have to understand, and I think everyone does very basically understand this, that there's a difference between me as I am right now, made of what substance, whatever qualities I have,
because
and
you're
then there's a difference, yeah, and then there's a difference between me going on and punching someone, right? Right now, I'm just talking about what material, for example, I am made of, right?
okay.
So I'm
So
asking you to,
so
yeah,
if we're going based off your question, then like I said, it doesn't negate the point. And yes, listen. My entire issue is relational. You negating the relational part is essentially you just saying, well, jihadist, I'm going to get you to agree that God is simple and then say you agree with me because we just dismissed the relational part. My issue with that is the following, is that we have essentially removed the crux of my issue. My issue has not been solved. Because my entire beginning, from the start of this whole conversation, was a relational issue. I said, well, hey, you cannot have not distinct attributes because then it would entail the hammer and anvil problem. Is that it's the same action, you wouldn't even know what the essence is. So I'm saying in order for you to even bring it down to the non-relational level, you need to address the relational part first. Because I would
no,
say that
I don't agree with that.
okay, so
What I'm doing,
there's okay,
what
so
I'm
this is our fundamental disagreement, and what I'm saying is
No,
that
no, it is not our fundamental
it,
disagreement. That's exactly what I'm
it is
showing you.
it is,
I'm
and I'll explain why. It is, and I'll explain why. It is our
it's like
fundamental.
you're
It is, and I'll explain why. Yes, yeah. Because our main fundamental disagreement here is the following.
would you I think you should let me present the argument first, right? Because right now you're like debating on how I should present the argument at the first
No, no,
place.
I'm not.
Then present
I'm not debating that at all. I'm just answering the prelude before it begins. I'm just saying that listen, our main fundamental disagreement here is that well, I'm saying that you need to address the relational part first because all I'm arguing
no,
for is
I think the relational
you
no,
cannot you
but
cannot
for me, the divine simplicity isn't even about the relational
that's
part at the first place.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not making an argument against you. I'm standing by my own grounds. I'm just making an argument in defense of mine. What I'm saying
That
here is
that
that
is fine, but what I'm trying to ask you is basically is a very simple thing, right? Now, if you say that the divine essence in its own self is absolutely simple, then you have already agreed. There are either two possibilities. One possibility is that you believe every. So, okay, well, let me first ask before even presenting the possibilities. Do you think that the divine essence has non-relational attributes?
do I think what?
Do you think the divine essence has non-relational attributes?
Well, what do you mean by non-relational attributes? As in they're just the essence itself? No,
Yeah.
no.
For example, and
I'm saying
to
I'm
put
saying
it very simply,
no, no.
to put it very simply,
Yes, wallahi, it's simple. You said putting it. I know it's simple. I'm not saying it's difficult to
okay.
understand.
Does the essence have
I'm saying it's wrong.
non-relational attributes? No,
I'm saying
I'm
it's
just asking you a question. It's a yes or no question. Does the essence have
yes,
non-relational?
yes. I 100% understand. But what I'm saying here is that you cannot address this question because if we could not address the relational part, you can never know the essence. You can never know God. You can never know the essence if you do not address the
I'm
relational
not
part.
asking you about knowing it. What I'm saying is that
No, you're asking
does
all those questions. You're saying does the
does
essence
the
have this
essence
perspective?
have non-relational attributes or not? Well, what I am very simply asking is this, that there's a person, right? There's a difference between what that person is and what that person does, right? I'm asking you about what God is, as in not what God does, what God is, right? So now, does the if obviously I don't think you believe that God is only that which he does, right? I hope so. You don't believe that. That's
No,
not what the
Yeah, I don't. What I believe, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. All I'm advocating for is the following. All I'm saying is that all the attributes of God are descriptors of what the essence can do.
That's fine. That's fine. But what I'm asking right now is not what the essence does, not what the essence can do, right?
Yeah,
But what the essence is.
you're asking from the essence itself, and I told you we
Yeah. So
cannot we
now what
cannot
I'm
we cannot
asking,
reach to answer that question. We cannot even answer that question if we cannot identify the essence to begin with.
so the only way to identify the essence is through what it can do. That's what
Correct.
you believe. So
Correct. So
there is no, so the essence has no existence apart from what it can do.
no, I'm saying that the essence is independent. It will exist, right, whether we like it or not. But what I'm saying is that if this is the case, then you are essentially saying God is a machine, because then what you'd be
No, no,
telling
no,
me
no. I'm
is
not. I'm just
well,
asking you. I'm not even
I
making
know,
a claim right now.
I,
What I'm
I,
saying is
I
that
know, I know. Don't take the words. What you'd be essentially saying as like a you yourself believe. Yeah, take it as an implication to me speaking to someone who does affirm that. So what I'm saying here is that in order for you to even know that there's the essence of God, you need to be able to recognize it by the descriptors. And all I'm arguing for here is the
that's
following.
fine. That's
I'm
fine.
saying, I'm saying
That
no,
is fine. But that
no,
doesn't change the truth value of the proposition
it's
that
not.
whether the essence can do this or not.
Is what?
That see that doesn't you are presenting an epistemological claim, which is fine.
Yeah.
You are basically saying this, bro. It's
Yeah.
like there's a line in a cave, right? And I'm asking you about, bro, is this line, does this line have a fur or not, right? And just saying you, oh, don't tell me whether it will attack you or not. But you're like, no, you see, I can't tell you about the lion until I go into its cave, and by necessity it is going to attack me.
No,
Then I can tell you about it.
not at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that in order for you to know what a lion in itself is, you need to know what the lion is able to do. So, for example, if I tell you,
No, I don't
for,
agree with that.
well,
That is a great assumption.
yeah. So if you disagree with that, I have an example
What
here.
what is what is the substantiation for that assumption?
Okay, here's a great substantiation right here. All I'm saying is, okay,
The question is, see,
if you have a can of
uh,
Pepsi.
1 minute, brother. You can present the substantiation, but I'm saying even if you do, right? Even if because I don't want to talk about things that are not directly related to
It's
the issue.
necessary for
Let's
us
just
to know.
grant you this. Yeah,
It is
let you
related
just.
to the issue. It is related to the issue, Ilyas, because that's my objection.
That's fine. That's fine. We can come back to
It's,
it. But
no, it's not.
for
It's
right
not.
now,
Yes, please. It's not fine if you take the objection that I have, throw it out the window, and then claim I have no objection.
no, no. What I'm saying is this: that okay. Even if I grant you this, because you are making a claim about you cannot know the essence, right?
You can
Without
never
knowing.
the
Yeah,
descriptors. Yeah,
yeah. So that's fine.
I
Without
substan-
knowing, not
yeah,
knowing.
I
Right.
substantiated by
But
the
but
following. I
what
say
I
if
am
you have
asking you, is this, okay? What I am asking you is this basically, that regardless of whether you can know it or not know it, does the essence have things or propositions about itself that relate to what it is non-relationally?
okay, if you are, I'll repeat. If we are saying is the essence independent out of these things, okay, yeah, sure, I have no problem. The essence itself is independent of these things. The essence can do whatever it wants, regardless of whether people perceive it or not. But that's not the claim. The issue that I'm
That's fine.
having.
That's all. No, that's all
No,
what I
please,
was
please,
asking. This was
yeah, just
no,
give
no.
me a
I'm not
second.
even arguing. I'm not even arguing
I
against
know,
you
I
right
know,
now.
I know.
That's all.
I know it's not an argument. It's a discussion, right? So I just want to substantiate my claim, so even the people in the audience can understand my side, right? So if you have a can of Pepsi.
In a minute. I'm just restarting the app.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I'll be here. 10 minutes. I'm unsure if I will remain here, but if by chance I'll be able to stay for an additional 30 minutes. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
My
Okay.
app is actually glitching right now, so let me just.
What's happening? Let me help you. What's going on?
Um, I can't
Black screen?
open it.
Is it like crashing so a black screen only? Okay, if it's just a black screen, you have to turn off your phone completely. If you're on your phone, turn off your phone
Yeah,
completely.
I agree.
Yeah, turn it back on, and then that would help. You would be out of the VC, by the way. So when you turn off your phone, don't worry, we're not like listening to you turning off your phone already. Once you turn off your phone, you're out of the VC, and then when you turn it back on, and you go on Discord, it will put you back in the VC.
Yeah, I'm back.
Everything works?
Yes.
Okay, so the proposition that I was presenting here, or the justification for what I believe here, is that if you have a can of Pepsi, right, and I tell you, well, this can of Pepsi is by itself, what is it? You won't be able to know what Pepsi is unless you know what Pepsi tastes like, yeah, or what Pepsi looks like, or what Pepsi, or the descriptors of the Pepsi, right? And what I mean by this is that if I go up to a random person and I tell them, well, hey, have you ever heard of Red Bull the Yellow Edition? Right, I have a can of Red Bull the Yellow Edition here, so I'm using this as an example. Red Bull the Yellow Edition. And he says, well, I don't know what the hell the Red Bull the Yellow Edition is. I'm not going to tell him, well, the Red Bull the Yellow Edition exists by itself and expect him to know what is Red Bull the Yellow Edition. Right? He will just call me crazy. Now, the way that I can get him to know what Red Bull Yellow Edition is by describing it, is by telling him, well, it's Yellow Edition, it's colored yellow, it tastes like watermelon. It's from the company Red Bull. The can is yellow. It has a steel top. And then when he goes to the supermarket, he would be able to say, Red Bull, the Yellow Edition. Yeah, and then he would know what it is. Right? But without these descriptors, you would never know what it is. All it is just in your head. It's just the Yellow Edition Red Bull. That's the height of it. Right? So this is my problem with
That
Ilyas,
is fine. That is fine. That is fine.
A mere conception, and that's my problem.
The thing is, the descriptors are of two types, right? I am asking about one particular type of descriptors right now.
All descriptors are of one type.
No, they are of two types essentially.
What are the two types?
Obviously, obviously, one of the types is basically just one of the types is more simple. It is the basic thing, and the others are just abstractions that we take out from that. The basic type of descriptor is what that thing. Okay, let me just explain. Maybe you would agree then. That what is that thing as it is, right? For example, color is not a real thing in the outside reality, right? Someone else might see red as yellow.
No, it
right?
is.
There's no.
It is a real thing. Color is a real thing.
Does everyone perceive the same color of a same thing? Or are there different people who see different colors in the same thing?
No, but it's objectively in reality that specific color.
No.
So because then let's say blue, the universal part of it would be blueness, right? And everything that's blue, regardless of how they perceive it, would fall in line under blueness.
Oh, anything that is blue, it just depends upon how you see it.
No, because you can never see blue and tell me it's red.
No, what I'm saying is that in the outside reality, there could be something, right, which appears blue to one person and red to another person.
Yeah, but this is an extreme example because then we're talking about a biological dysfunction here, like color blindness. But that's not what we're addressing. I'm saying it is quite literally impossible in reality for someone to see the color blue. To see the color
that's not what I was talking about.
And turn around and say it's red.
That's not what I was talking about. What I was saying is basically this. That take your Red Bull example as well. What I was asking about is that, okay, what are the coordinates of that can? Can you describe to me the objective ontology as it is, fin nafsul amr, what that can is like, right?
Yes, I would describe
the can. The can has the height of this, the weight of this, fulan of this, it is made of this metal, things like these, right? That are objective descriptions of what the can is right now at this moment, right? What it is made of. What I was asking you about and you answered it, and I want to go after that. What I want to say is that I asked you the same question about the divine essence, right? And you said that at least from what I understood, that in the divine essence itself there is no composition, right? Now the thing is, if it is true that the divine essence does not have any composition, and it is also true that the divine essence has non-relational attributes, right? That are distinct from one another. If the divine essence, and there can be either two cases. You have already agreed that the divine essence does not have any plurality. Now, either the divine essence has relational attributes, non-relational attributes, or it does not have non-relational attributes. I would think, and I think everyone thinks that the divine essence does have non-relational attributes. Where it doesn't make sense of talking about anything without it having non-relational attributes, without it having being an existentiated reality in the objective realm. So obviously that everything that exists has at least one non-relational attribute. It could be its existence itself, right? That is the most basic non-relational
That's
attribute.
that's
No,
that's fine. That's fine.
oh
Doesn't
yeah,
negate
let
what
me finish.
I mean.
Yeah, let me just finish now. Now, if you think that the divine essence have multiple non-relational attributes, right? Then it follows from this that these non-relational attributes would actually be identical to each other. That's all I am saying.
I
That
would disagree. That's the part where I would disagree with.
okay. 1 minute. Now let's talk on that. What I am saying from the very start to this right now is very simple. Is this that the divine essence, and you already believe this, that it is absolutely simple. If it is absolutely simple, then whatever I say about the divine essence, right, as in what it is, not what its
I
relation
would,
is with something else.
I would heavily disagree. You see, Ilyas, we're
Okay,
moving.
I have not even made the claim yet. What I am saying is that what I say about the divine essence, anything about the divine essence itself, not
That's
its
right.
relation with some other existent, right? What I
That's
say about the divine essence, any two propositions about the divine essence are actually about the same signified. That's all
that,
I'm saying.
again. As I said
Do
earlier,
you
all this was is taking essentially the issue that I have, not addressing it, and then saying making a claim off of it. Now I'm
okay?
saying,
So do you at least agree with this then? Let's just we can go on to the next issue, but first
I said
deal.
no, no. I said I disagree, right? And I told
Okay, so
I
you
want
believe
to the specific crux of my issue here, and that is, if you take a look at VC chat, I posted a diagram, right? Especially about the blue and red thing, because I really wanted to address that specifically and what I mean by that, because we do not agree there. You say that, okay, that's fine, but we're not addressing the issue. You say that's fine, and then skimp over the issue like it's completely nothing, right? But it's a major issue, right? And this is what I want to address. And I'm saying, well, listen, you are telling me that someone in reality could see the color all the way on the left and identify it as the color all the way to the right. And I'm telling you, not a single human, it is quite literally impossible. It is a logical impossibility for someone to look at the very left of this image that I posted in VC chat and say it's the same thing as the thing on the right. There is not a single being on that. The reason for this is because we have understandings of what blueness and redness is. And these effects are very real. These are very real, distinct colors, right? And so this is why I would say colors are very real. And I would say they have a real distinction. Now, back to what we were saying. I would say that these distinctions are very important. We can't just jump over them because, as I said earlier, yes, and I'll repeat. I'm not saying your logic is simple. It's just wrong because you cannot know what the essence is if you cannot describe it.
that is fine. That's not what I was talking about. I was saying simply this.
That's what I'm talking about, yes, because I'm saying
That
if
is absolutely fine. We can talk about that. The argument I was presenting, and you're not answering the question I've asked you multiple
Ilyas,
times.
yes, because
That
the
I
question I have answered. No, but we could go back at the recording and take a look. I've answered several times because the same question has been repeated, and I've been saying the same thing. I've been saying, well, Ilyas, you can't ask me that question until you can describe what the essence is. And you say, well, that's
no,
fine.
I don't agree with that. I
Ilyas,
don't agree with that.
that's fine.
Again,
Listen, let me
you
finish. You say that's
no
fine.
no 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 brother. No, 1 minute, 1 minute,
You say
1 minute.
jihadist, that's fine. You say
I
that's fine.
I ask you I ask
We'll
you
address it
about
later.
non-relational. I ask you about
What's happening?
non-relational attributes, and
We say
you keep on saying that you can know the non-relational attributes without knowing the relational attributes. I am not asking about the epistemology of knowing or not knowing the relational attributes or non-relational
I
attributes.
know you're
What
not.
I'm
Yes,
asking
yes,
you,
I know
what
you're
I'm
not.
asking you,
Wallahi, I know
what
you're
I'm
not. But
it's absolutely fine if you want to say okay, you can do that. I grant you that, absolutely fine, no problem at all.
you didn't. No,
What I am asking
you didn't
you.
grant it, Ilyas. Ilyas, you're not granting it because if you grant my point by default, you're wrong. Because
No,
My
I
issue
am
is
saying,
Ilyas,
even
you
if I
see,
grant you this,
it-
my question essentially,
it's not fair.
is about whether God has non-relational attributes, and if yes, obviously he has, no doubt about that. Nobody can deny that. If he has non-relational attributes, what position do you hold? Are the non-relational attributes identical to each other, or are they distinct from each other?
I'm telling you, all the attributes of God are distinct from each other. But my explanation here
Even
is,
the non-relational ones.
I'm an atheist. I told you already. There is no non-relational ones. If you cannot describe them, if you cannot point out and say,
You're saying
hey,
there are
jihad,
no non-relational.
if you say
You're saying
jihad, just take a look there. That is the wrath of God, and you show me the wrath of God. If you cannot do that, you will never be able to know what God is. So what I'm trying to explain, Ilyas,
that is not what I'm
you keep
saying. What I'm saying,
yes,
does
I
God have
understand. Yes,
non-relation?
we're gonna get somewhere, I promise, right? But what essentially is happening here, yes, is what you're saying is the fault. You're saying I would bring up the objection. You would say that is fine, jihadist. That is fine. We'll talk about that. You dismiss the issue, throw it out the window, and I tell you, well, Ilyas, we cannot move on until this issue is addressed. And you say that's fine. I'll grant you, and then just continue on, right? And so it becomes an issue of you just trying to drill through the hole. And I'm telling you, well, Ilyas, we have jumped over so many issues, right? And now I'd appreciate if my issues were addressed because my beginning part of this discussion, right? I already told you. You said you explained what ADS believes. We can go back in the recording. We can take a look at the recording. I'm sure the what's his name, Mullah Sadra can play it back again for us. Rizzi can play it back again for us. I clearly told you my only issue with ADS, the one that I'm going to discuss with you, is the following: is the attribute problem, and that is you cannot tell me that they are not distinct from one another without essentially claiming that God is simply philosophy of the mind. I'm saying you cannot know God if you cannot point out to me the effects of these attributes in reality. And I showed you the
That is
example of
fine, but
coherent.
but
See,
the problem there
Elias,
is,
you're doing it again. You're saying that's fine. I would like an answer, not that's
yeah,
fine, and then dismissal.
the problem there is your misunderstanding of what Islamic divine simplicity even is at the first place, right?
No, I know
Because
what it is.
for us even the relational attributes are distinct from one another, absolutely distinct from one another, because
Absolutely.
because relations do not have any reality
Are they,
aside from each other,
okay,
right?
would you?
The
Yeah, but
whole claim of our divine simplicity is about non-relational attributes. So I don't understand what are we on about, because
yes,
the
yes.
divine simplicity. One minute. Let me talk for a while now. The divine simplicity, in particular, if you read the works which are against the Ashaira, because the Athari we I said nobody like really engaged with the Atharis as such anyway. So for the Ashaira, there are 7 non-relational mother attributes, right? And
Correct.
for them, the non-relational attributes are distinct from one another, right? And obviously they say, yeah, we know the non-relational attributes due to our relation with God, but the non-relational attributes are distinct from each other and are ontological identities that subsist within the divine essence, right? So if your whole claim about divine simplicity is that, oh, the relational attributes are distinct from each other, MashaAllah, we agree with that. We already agree that the relational attributes are distinct from one another. What
We
we are
don't.
saying is
We
this.
don't. We don't. No, Elias, we do not.
No,
Wallahi, we
I
do.
agree. I agree that the relational attributes are distinct from one another.
Do you agree
That's not what
no? Do you agree that they're really distinct in reality?
there is no reality of the relational attributes to
So,
start with.
no,
They are just relations.
no. Forget the non-relational relational part. I'm talking just simply the basics 101 of ADS. Are the attributes only distinct in the mind, or are they really distinct?
There are 2 types of attributes: relational attributes,
Answer the
non-relational
question.
attributes.
Answer the question.
Relational attributes are really distinct from one another because they are nothing other than abstractions themselves. The
Okay.
non-relational attributes are real entities, both for the philosophers and the Ashaira. For the Ashaira and Maturidiyya, they are non-identical to each other, and for the
We
philosopher, they are
we
identical to each other.
we disagree with all of those. We disagree with the Sha'ira on this. We disagree with the Maturidi on this, and we disagree with the philosophy on
That's
this.
fine. That's fine. But
As
what
I've
you're
said,
saying is that,
before, we believe
yeah,
all of
but,
the
but for the
attributes are
philosopher,
relational.
what do you mean by relational then? How is existence a relational attribute?
Okay, so when I say the word relational, right, is I would say not in the idea that these things are contingent upon one another, but in the idea that these two things are essentially necessary natures of God.
No, that's not what relation is. That's not what they mean.
Yes,
Everyone means when
relation. All relationalism really is things exist and function as a relational entity, right?
yeah, not existing. See,
Now,
they are
I'm saying
in
that.
the Arabic it comes on to sifat zati and sifat fi'liya, right? So
Yeah, but
yeah, so for us,
this is an entirely an Ash'ari concept, right? But what I'm explaining to you is the following. I'm telling you, well, in
no,
order
no,
for
this
us,
is not an Ashari concept as well. This
in
this
order,
even Atharis
in order,
believe in this.
I understand, but all I'm saying is that the idea that you are proposing with the non-relational attributes and the relational attributes of the six and stuff like that, and you say that okay, the Ash'ari would say that these subside in the essence. This is Ash'ari stuff, right? This is not what we're talking about. I would just really
Even
genuinely
even
like an
Atharis
answer to
believe
my
in this.
objection. That's fine. I just genuinely would like my objection answered, which is that
No, I
is it
think you are
is
not even objecting to ADS because we already agree with what you are saying.
no, you don't. You heavily disagree.
You are saying that the relational attributes are distinct from one another. Okay, I agree.
Are the
But that's
non-relational
not
ones
what
distinct?
ADS. That's not what the ADS is.
Are the non-relational ones distinct?
No, the non-relational ones are identical to each other.
Okay, if they're all identical to each other, okay, then my question is, how do you do any of these descriptors that you have given that are non-relational? Can you know God can you know God through them?
What do you mean through them? Through what?
Can you point out their effect in the universe?
Of what? Of what
So
in particular?
give me a non-relational attribute you believe in.
Knowledge of God.
Okay, knowledge of God. Can you see the effects of the knowledge of God happening in reality?
The effect of the knowledge of God is identical to the effect of the existence of God.
So you cannot point it out within the universe. You cannot say, "Well, Jihadist, take a look. This is
No,
God's
everything,
knowledge."
everything is an effect of the knowledge of God.
Everything is okay. Does this apply to all the other attributes?
What do you mean? All the other non-relational attributes? Yes.
No. Okay, so give me another one other than knowledge.
Existence.
So his knowledge.
Every attribute for us.
So would
All
you
the
say that God's knowledge
attributes.
is his existence?
Yes.
Okay, then I would heavily disagree.
Okay. So
There you
why?
go.
Why?
So,
For us,
not because they're
the
distinct.
only fundamental reality,
The
the
reason why they're
only
distinct is
fundamental,
because
yeah,
we'd be saying that God is God is God is God is God. That's literally the argument you're making.
for us, the only fundamental reality is existence. Everything else is a particular mode of existence.
I would heavily disagree. I would say particulars are only things you could observe, see, and touch and feel.
Would you agree that the only actual thing in reality is existence?
No, I'm not.
So there is there.
I do not support وحدة الوجود, my friend.
That's not even wahdat al-wujud. That's basics. That
No, وحدة
wahda,
الوجود. Literally, the Arabic phrase وحدة الوجود. It means the soulness of existence. So literally,
that is the unity of being.
yeah. The entire argument is that the only real existence is God existence, and I would disagree with that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the only
It
real
would
thing
entail
is
that.
existence.
No, you're not. You're
I'm
not
saying the
saying that.
only real thing is existence. Okay, is there something in existence apart from existence?
Yeah,
What is that?
the things that you're seeing within your existence.
Okay, they are existence as well.
So I'm saying this bottle of water, it really is a
Yeah, it
bottle
has
of water.
existence. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
but
has existence.
it having existence does not mean it is entirely and solely existence. This is a fallacy.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is there something else in it that is not existence? It's very simple. I can just I think we can end this conversation on the fact I can explain the Sadrian view of what existence is. For us, everything is existence, right?
Okay, I'm back.
Now,
Apologies.
existence.
I had to go to my
Yeah,
dad.
yeah.
I didn't hear anything. Could you repeat the first part?
Oh, okay. Existence. I'm just explaining what we think, and then you can say, and I think we can end the conversation here.
Okay, sure.
That for us, existence is one reality, right? And everything in reality is existence. Now, why do we say, and even in physics you see this, that existence is graded in multiple ways, right? For example, you see a particular gradation of existence, you see a particular manifestation of existence in one way, and then, for example, you see a chair, and then you see a particular manifestation of existence another way, you see a table or something else, right? Now,
Okay.
if you were to take a table, right, and if you take this table and you finish all the limitations, all the ways this table is limited, right? If you take a table and you
Okay.
finish all the ways in which this table is limited, right? Then mafhuman, meaningfully, this table would be identical to God. Same as anything that exists. If you take
I
that
would
thing,
very much disagree.
that's fine, that's fine. What I'm saying, what I'm trying to explain is that you take any existential concept, right, and you take away every limitation away from it, and it would become identical to God. For example, you take knowledge, which is an existential concept. You take all the limitation away from it, right? It would become identical to God. That is why we
Doubly disagree.
say, okay, that's fine, that's fine. I'm just trying to explain what the view is. You can explain yours, and we can end the conversation. So what we say is that, yeah, in finite modes, knowledge is different than power. Absolutely, there's no doubt about that.
Right.
But infinite knowledge and infinite power are actually identical to each other.
I
And
would
that is
disagree.
the same as, okay, that's fine, that's fine. And that is the same as anything else that is truly infinite. Because a true infinity is only one. It can be only one. There cannot be anything other than a true infinity that is non-identical to that true infinity. So
Okay.
that's what we believe, and you can say your own view, and then we can end the conversation.
Okay. So, as for the existence part, I wanted to address the existence part before I end this. The existence part, and this is my main problem with it, the reason why I said it's a fallacy is because it's a fallacy of composition to entail that something that is a part of something is the whole of the thing, right? And what I mean by this is that if I say this bottle of water, yeah, it really does exist. It really is there within your existence, and you say, well, yeah, it's technically still existence, so it's still the whole of the thing, and only existence really is the thing that's existing. That's the fallacy of composition, right? Because I'm saying existence is a part of a water bottle. It's not the whole thing that makes up the water bottle. There are other things that make up the water bottle. Now, um, that is the first fundamental disagreement I have with the example you gave. Second of all, our view just simply relies on the following. We only maintain one objection to ADS. So far, all I've received is that's fine, Jihadist, okay, we'll move on. None of it bristled to my issue. Because my entire issue is the following, is I'm saying, well, you are unable to recognize God if you are not able to describe God, right? If you tell me that God is something that solely everything is identical to his essence, then you won't be able to describe to me his essence, because everything that you're describing is things that I have no clue what you're saying they are, because they're all identical to the same thing. So unless you're telling me that God's essence is explainable, that becomes problematic. Or unless you are telling me that God's essence is merely a concept in the philosophy of the mind, that's also problematic. So I think the most feasible option here, the most logically adequate answer here is to say, well, these attributes are descriptors of God. And that's the atheist position, is that these descriptors of God tell us what the essence can do, right? And they are uncreated attributes because they describe what the essence can do. So the essence creates, hence why God is the creator. And the creator is distinct from the merciful because of the real actions you see occurring around you. For example, if God shows someone his mercy, you would be able to spot that. If God shows someone his wrath, you would be able to spot that. According to ADS, you wouldn't. You would not be able to. Why? Because, well, you would not know God. It wouldn't be God technically doing it, because then they would all be created, right? And that becomes very problematic. So, all in all, I think it just boils down to this one simple objection, which I still did not get an answer for, and it is the following. I directly tell you, I believe God is simple. I do not believe God is made up of things. Not at all. But I'm saying all my argument is that if you want to know a can of Red Bull, you have to describe the can of Red Bull with its descriptors. You cannot tell me the can of Red Bull is actually yellow, but yellow is also Red Bull. So it has steel on top, but steel is also Red Bull. And yeah, it has a sign of a bull in the front, but the bull is also a Red Bull, right? And so when I go to the store, right, I won't say, this is a can of Red Bull. I would take the Red Bull and I would say, this entire thing is just Red Bull, which means I can drink the bull, I can drink the yellow, I can drink the steel part, right? Because it's all the same identical things. Now, my entire argument is that you would never really know what Red Bull is if you're not going to describe it properly by saying, well, it has a yellow, front, it has etc. etc. It has the bulls on front, it has a steel can on top. If you do not give me the descriptors properly, but if you say that the descriptors are identical to it, no one would know what Red Bull is. In other words, if you have a can of Pepsi or a burger or any sort of item or a box or a water bottle, even if you want to teach me what this thing is, you have to describe it. You cannot tell me it's the thing of the thing of the thing of itself, because the entire argument has been so far, the entire claim that ADS has been explaining so far is the following statement: quotes, God is God, is God is God, end quote. And that to me makes zero sense. Because I'm saying you have to describe God. Otherwise, you're not talking about God. You're talking about your mere conception of God. And that's what makes the ADS belief problematic towards ethnies. But I think our conversation went really well, even though we had a little bit of struggles. I added you, so I'm more than happy to discuss this further. Just you and I in DMs or something of the sort. I think we're both adults, and hopefully this conversation does not make us angry at each other. And yeah, it's been nice talking.
Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Jazak. Tamam. Okay, so where's Mullah Sadra? Rizzi,